Patrick.
Yeah, okay, so I'm presuming if you have to declare that you're a CSF, then you have to, a community service flight. That's a ticking of a box somehow, is it?
It's a ticking of a box, so it would be
there's no burden in that.
It would be declaring a SAR time in the aircraft, and it would be logging it in your logbook, so that statistically over a period of time, then we'll know which ones are community service flights and which ones are not, which is, as I said, has been quite a difficulty for us because we've been relying on figures provided by the organisations plus our own analysis.
So if you had to do a leg to get to a pickup point and then a leg to a destination and then a leg home, are all 3 legs community service?
I don't know. I'd have to ask my colleagues, Senator, I'm not a pilot.
The intent is if you're going to be reimbursed by the CSF, in that case, yes, because that goes under that construct.
That's right.
In the case which you mentioned earlier of the night VFR concern, we thought about your concern about that closing off any opportunities for people. One, we considered that because they have thousands of pilots available to them if they plan weeks and months in advance, and they know they might be having a schedule time that brings them up against night. At last report on their 2011 mishap, what they reported, they had 61%, I think, were IFR rated pilots. So good opportunity for people who are cleared to fly at night. So they could pre-plan and get somebody in there with an aircraft that could support that. But
I'd love to have a pilot that's IFR rated or a commercial airline pilot that's doing the flight. I'd love that. That'd make me feel even safer probably. But once again, it goes to the safety. If you've got a night VFR qualified pilot, I mean, they've got the CASA stamp that says they are safe to fly from A to B at night under VFR conditions. And what my major concern here is that you're putting in place regulations that, if they're safety based, I've got no problem with that. Hence the pilot hours. But if, for example, there are additional maintenance requirements where a pilot's going to say, well, if we're going to do this flight, I'm going to have to book my inspection 3 months earlier or 1 month earlier, and that's going to cost me a couple of $1,000s before I can even qualify to do this flight. It may, and once again, that aircraft could otherwise be used to fly me from A to B, not as a passenger. If it deters people from engaging in this community service that helps people out, helps people in regions out, because boy, they do it tough. That's where I have a problem. So look, I'm gonna stop here, and I'm going to ask you to, and once again, I'll say that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. The Privacy Acts of the ATSB, the secrecy associated with the ATSB is subservient to the inquiry powers of the Senate. But but I say that giving you the opportunity to correct me. In the case of both Mount Gambier and the Melbourne, the Moorabbin, I think, wasn't it? The first accident flight, yeah.
The first accident was nil. I think, in Victoria, and the second was Mount Gambier.
And in both of those cases, having done an inspection would not have done anything in terms of changing the outcome of those flights because they were not maintenance related.
Oh, that's correct, Senator.
Okay, so can you, as you're going to table some statistics so that they can be reviewed by people, and I'm sure Angel Flight will have their interest in it, we'll have our interest in it, and so forth, that grounds your claim here in this committee that they are less safe. And I'd like you, as you're doing that, where there is some problem that has occurred in your analysis, perhaps annotate next to it and say, our new regulation would have prevented that from occurring.
Senator, as I've said in the broad, and I understand what you've requested. As I said in the broad, this is about.
You're happy to do that, Mr. Cameron?
This is about raising the threshold. I would prefer to ensure that the Australian Transport Safety Bureau's accident investigation report, which will be much more thorough than the work we do in this space, is out. at the same time.
But you've said you've done
convergent
the
with that.
statistics.
Oh, we've done some statistics.
Yeah.
But the issue of maintenance is less of a statistical issue, if I may. Private aircraft fly approximately 50 hours a year. That's all. So there's a threshold that says every 12 months you'll have your aircraft
Now, hang on,
inspected.
that average includes me who doesn't fly very often, as opposed to the people who are quite experienced.
Quite, but the BITRA standard says that private aircraft fly an average of 50 hours a year. It's 50, isn't it?
Yes.
When we consider these activities, community service flight activities, we've categorised them as private activities, but they're on the cusp of commercial activities in the sense that the reality is that people are receiving funding payment for them. So in a technical sense, they're on the cusp. We put them in the private category because we know that, and we also know that the aircraft aren't operated that much. When you start to move into layers above these activities, above private activities, you add more. There is more complexity, and there are more requirements. There is more maintenance. There is more training as you move up from the private to the commercial, through all the way up to regular public transport. We add more and more layers. With the case of something like the 100-hour maintenance issue, because we did propose a much more stringent maintenance regime, and we listened to what was said in the feedback, and we reduced that maintenance regime significantly in the final instrument.
Yeah, that's the equivalent of saying we could have been even worse, but we're not.
No. Well, I suppose what I'm
how
saying
does
is,
it make it safer?
what I'm saying is we consulted and we listened to what people said, that those maintenance requirements would be too onerous. It makes it safer because it catches the outriders. The people who get caught in the above 100 hours are the ones I want to catch, Senator. The people who are flying their aircraft for 300 hours are the ones I want to catch, because they're using their aircraft a lot more than the average. They're the ones, and there won't be very many of them.
But they're going to be more experienced.
But this is not about experience. Your question is about maintenance.
Okay, well,
so it's how often the aircraft is
yeah, okay,
used,
sure.
and so the 12-hour, 12-month thing, the 100 hours and the 12 months is
My
pretty much
problem
a
is
standard. If I may, can I ask
we're
Mr. Moran
back
to
to
say
same
something?
person, it's the same pilot, same aircraft.
I'm not sure how the aircraft becomes less safe if I jump in as a community service passenger versus someone who has just met Senator Patrick.
What I'm saying is it's statistically less safe because there are more accidents and incidents in that sector brokered by people than there are in
You have to
private
ground.
flying.
You have to ground that
Certainly,
properly
certainly.
with evidence.
The maintenance,
And
if I
can I
may.
just tell you the strategy that my party has done in terms of lodging a disallowance? We've lodged a disallowance in the House. That's really just to send a signal so that people would, can be prepared and present their case. I will do the same in the Senate when it returns on the 2nd of April. I don't want to disallow something, but you've got to make your case. You've got to, you are the safety authority. You are introducing a regulation that you say is centred around safety. I can't quite see it as it stands. You've now basically said it comes down to the statistics. You are concerned that Angel Flight have more incidents than the regular
than
private pilots.
Than private flying.
I want to see those statistics and see how these regulations would have altered those statistics back into the, to get it back into the same place we are with just normal pilot
We're concerned at both the incidents, and I'm concerned at the two fatal accidents too, and I don't want to see another one.
Yeah, sure.
No
one does, but you can't then change make a set of regulations that don't relate to those two flights.
I think, Senator, if I may make one observation, and that is that of the 200 odd responses that we received to our consultation, a significant number of those were Angel Flight pilots themselves. That's a relevant consideration, and just over 50% of those Angel Flight pilots said no change is required. but close to 50%, in the high 40s, said something needs to be done here. They're people who operate in that sector. Those responses are published on our website. They are visible. So what I'm saying is that I've got a range of very experienced angel flight people who come up with a similar view. I've also got people who disagree with the view. But some of the people who disagree with the view disagree with any form of regulation, Senator. So they would disagree with whatever I told them.
Now, I'm sure AOPA is listening, and I'm sure that Angel Flight are listening, and I'm sure that they will make a submission to, or they'll write to the committee, and my message to them will be the same. Ground any claims you make with evidence. And the nice thing is we've got estimates in 6 weeks' time. Hopefully, no, I'm serious about that. Luckily,
Looking forward to it.
Lovely reminder. It's 5:10 on a spillover day on a Friday.
I'm trying to finish off. I'm just saying,
if you haven't had enough yet,
let's have a
there's more to
relook
come.
at this in 6 weeks' time, with your evidence on the table and with the evidence of the anyone else who wants to make a contribution.
Can I say, Senator, that's fine. Understand everything that you've said. I would make the point, however, that as a Director of Aviation Safety, my responsibility is to keep Australians safe. They're the decisions that I make, that the government's empowered me to do and wants me to do, based on the evidence that I have. And I've made those decisions, and it's up to the Parliament if the Parliament wishes to disallow. I get that. I understand that.
And I'm a senator who wants to make sure that people who rely on these flights to get medical treatment do so also safely, but not at there's always a balance to be had here. I'm just not sure it's right.
There is certainly a balance, Senator, and
we can make it completely safe by banning everyone from flying, and there will be no accidents.
And that's certainly not our intent, which is why, as you know, why I listened to what was said with Rotary Wing and said that was not my intention
And I thank you
to
for
limit the field. My intention was to make sure that these activities occur. But we are in the precautionary space. I cannot prevent 2 accidents that occurred. I cannot do that. What I can do is raise standards to prevent the next accidents occurring. What I can do, I can't do any more with organisations like Angel Flight than encourage them to raise their standards, because I cannot get them to do anything else because they are not subject to my regulatory oversight. I can only encourage them to raise their standards. I've done that.
You
over the
gave
last
every one
18
of their
months.
pilots a licence, Mr. Carmody.
Oh no, but they would say they are not, with respect, Senator, they would say they are not their pilots.
Okay, sure.
So-
I'm done, Chair. And thank you very much for your time,
My
Mr.
pleasure.
Carmody.
And I think just following up what Senator Patrick said, and I think the reason why we are both concerned about these regulations is because we've heard from the general aviation sector over a long period of time that they feel like they are being squeezed out of existence by the level of regulation they face. And as Senator Patrick said, we could make things a lot safer if everybody stopped flying, but I don't think that's where any of us want to be. So do appreciate